Who's to say that the OR isn't international? From South Africa now to Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, it is round 4 of the Simrigs Sprint Series from the Nurburgring. Hello everybody, my name is Nick Amon and I want to welcome you to tonight's broadcast. And joining me in the booth this time, after a bit of a break for things outside of the organization, Simon Bauer. Simon, how have you been?
Hello, I've been wonderful. Things outside of the organization have taken up quite a bit of time, but most of that has calmed down, so back I am with a newly refreshed love for commentating and racing. But Nick, look at this weather. What is that about?
I don't know. Someone did a rain dance, I think, so we gotta kind of deal with that, which is... it's ridiculous, but I mean, looking at it, it's been absolutely pouring since the start of practice. It hasn't let up in the slightest. You can see 30 minutes from now it's going to pick up, but again, that won't really matter because we're going to be going into qualifying here in a couple of minutes. Does this weather stick around? I don't know how wet Germany is. Maybe you can give us some insight there.
I mean, if you want the real weather, right now it is absolutely storming outside my window, so this is definitely accurate.
Okay.
Last 3 weeks, I'd say, have been the most rainy summer I've ever witnessed. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely following a theme with this race. And I mean, Nurburgring is in the Eifel, which is a place very much known for weather that does not follow any rules in the world. So the rain could stop like at the beat of a heart. But looking at the weather forecast, it's still gonna be medium rain in 30 minutes, and it's even gonna get heavier. So I think we've got things set up for a pretty rainy race here. I know we've been asking people to do a rain dance in the past, and we were a little disappointed with how that turned out. But I guess whoever that rain dance was devoted to just, I don't know, has taken things a bit easy and fulfilled our wishes a bit late.
Well, these drivers are certainly coping with it. We had a couple of Drift Kings during the countdown to the start of the broadcast. I'm sure it was caught on camera. And just now with Rasmus Abelstead drifting his Mercedes, pulling up to, well, one of the most well-known parts of the circuit, the Mercedes Arena. So this is sort of home territory for this vehicle, but not so much the driver. Abelstead from Sweden, currently 4th here in free practice. Fabian Krebs, though, this is a home race for him. 3rd place here in free practice, 206, 152. But it's actually going to be one of North American representative drivers, Alan Julian, on top, 205.51. So it seems as though the hometown drivers in Germany is in the mud right now. Fedka down in 10th, Dorn in 15th. So I don't know, maybe NA is better than EU.
Oh ho. You don't want to start that debate. But 205, a point something, I forgot already. But 2.205, that's, I want to say, a little over 10 seconds off of what dry pace would be. So that's not that bad, actually. I mean, the rain looks like absolute hell, but 10 seconds off, or like 11 seconds off of dry pace isn't that much. I gotta say, though, it looks like it's gotten a little bit heavier again, now that we've gotten into qualifying. And if we look at the forecast, it's gonna just keep doing that. In 10 minutes, even heavier, 30 minutes, even heavier still. So, I would say these drivers are gonna want to set their qualifying laps as early as they possibly can. I mean, or do they? It's gonna be a balance between the cars clearing water off the track by just racing. I mean, right now the track is gonna feel like you need a raft to drive through there. But as we get a few cars out there doing a few laps, they're gonna clear the water off, and it's gonna get faster and faster. But at the same time, the rain is gonna get heavier and heavier. Not much, but a little bit, definitely noticeably. So there's probably gonna be a sweet spot a few minutes into this qualifying where the track is fastest, and from then on it's gonna get slower again. So it's not like our usual dry qualifyings where it doesn't matter when you go, as long as you set a fast time, you're in the clear. In this rain qualifying, you definitely need to find that window where the rain is fastest, and then you need to set a proper lap during that window.
Well, it's gonna be interesting to see, like you said, clearing the water off in 20 cars. It's not gonna clear too much, I don't think. But yeah, maybe those early quali laps might not be the best, so I'll say maybe about halfway through we should be seeing those best times, and then as the rain picks back up, then that's when we'll see more time just falling off. But Alexander Sutter right now from Switzerland is going to be leading us around the Nurburgring. So Simon, why don't you give us one of your patented track walks?
I knew that's exactly where you were going, so let's do it. We're going down the start-finish straights. I'm happy that it's raining, because I have a little bit more time to talk then and think about what I'm saying, but we're going down to turn 1. Very, very tight hairpin. I mean, interesting corner. Downhill a little bit, but you don't really want to go all the way to the outside, because you have to set yourself up for this left-hander, the first corner in the Mercedes Arena. Long corner. Very hard to find the proper place to accelerate here. Then we're going into almost a copycat corner, but a little bit slower, a little bit longer even. And then very interesting corner, 90 right, tough curb on the inside. It really unsettles the car, and at the same time it's also easy to go a little too wide and get a track limit warning on the outside. Then we've exited the Mercedes Arena. We're going down to a relatively simple corner, left-hander, relatively fast, banked a little bit, but it feeds right into this really interesting, slow, tight right-hander. That has a very important exit, because it feeds into this very long, well, not very long, but very powerful acceleration zone downhill. And we go into my favorite corner on the track, at Dunlop, a more than 180-degree hairpin, double apex, basically always. Interesting way to accelerate, you want to accelerate almost halfway into through the corner already. Then Schumacher has very, very fast piece of track. Just a little bit of a lift in the dry. In the rain, this is very, very tricky. Definitely more than lift there. Now, left-hander again, very, very tough curbs, both on the inside and on the outside for the exit, which feeds right into this right hand, a little bit longer than 90 degrees. Very tough to find the right acceleration zone here. Yeah, or place to accelerate. As we feed into another acceleration zone with this slight right-hand kink. Even in the rain, that's not really much of an issue. That's completely flat. Then, probably the toughest part of the track, this chicane. Very, very tough curves, but you can take a lot of speed through that chicane if you do it right, as we've just seen by Suter. And final corner, going a little bit wide, but you can do a double apex here, as long as you really, really focus on getting a smooth and powerful exit onto the start-finish straights. And what do we start off with? At 208.4, I think. That's a pretty good start.
Yep. Simon, always a pleasure having you walk us around the track, especially for someone like me who is a bit in the mud when it comes to, driving at a fast pace. You have the skill and the expertise to really help some of these drivers out. I'm certain there are people out there who watch this and they go, oh, I'm supposed to brake there, not there. So, yeah, it's good that you're doing it, because I would probably get something wrong. But Rochfeld decides to take provisional pole by 12 thousandths over Julian at 207.77, so 3 sevens lining up and immediately knocked down because Abelstead goes even faster, 207.58. Cuthbert into the 207s as well. Do we see that 206?
Really, definitely. At some points, as the track is gonna get faster, as the water is getting cleared off a little bit, and even as the drivers just get more comfortable and more used to these conditions. I mean, every rain session is different from the last. The volume of rain, the amount of standing water on the track is always going to be different. So the first few laps are definitely always going to be a little slower, at least if you're doing it right, as you still try to find your footing. And then as time goes on, you figure out how much grip exactly you still got left, even though for the most part every lap is still going to be different from the last, but only a tiny little bit. So it takes adaptability, but you can definitely find a rhythm and then stay in that rhythm, as long as the rain doesn't get super shifty, super inconsistent. These changeable conditions where the track goes from wet to dry or dry to wet, those are the most difficult ones, because that's where the conditions on the track are the most different from lap to lap. In these conditions, as the rain is staying relatively the same, you can definitely find the rhythm and then stay there.
Well, speaking of rain, I can hear it hitting your window. I was wondering what that was, and then I remembered you talked about the rain coming down. My God. That's, wow, you were not kidding when you said it was storming. It is quite literally just pouring buckets over there.
Interesting. I gotta check that out. I can't even hear it through my headphones.
Unless it was something else entirely. But anyways, Charles Phillips, 12th overall. Victor Brun told me not to bully him. I won't do it this time, I promise. Although he did go off when we had the camera on him. So while these drivers are still making their way around the circuit, getting these lap times sorted, let's look at the standings and the results from last week. At Kyalami, it wasn't what we expected. So normally we see a lot of the pro drivers up at the top, maybe a Pro-Am sneaks in there, but last time out, it was the Pro-Ams that showed up. Your top three, Visser, Julian, and Partez, 1 and 2, both Pro-Am drivers. The fact that we had 2 Pro-Ams in the top 3, I'd say is sort of rare, but to have them in 1 and 2, that's even more extraordinary. So shout out to those guys, of course, for making that happen. In the silver category, it was Abelstead, Cairns, and Naderpel. For Pro-Am, obviously Visser, Julian, much the same way as they finished the race. And then Florindo, who we're looking at right now, who's sitting in position 7 in qualifying, just a little over 3/4 of a second off the pace of Sutter, who has that 207, 117, or 177, so could be seeing that 206 coming through. And then for the amateurs, it was Rosas, Van Beberen, and Moscovich. Moscovich doing a pretty good job for himself first time out. And then for the pros, because, again, like I said, normally we have the pros in the top 3, but this is the first time I can recall that we haven't had all pros in the top 3. So it was Partez, Lemos, and Cuthbert. So maybe some promotions on the way. And then looking at the standings, Partez absolutely blazing the field with a 420 total point count, which is 129 points clear of Cuthbert, who has 292. But Cuthbert isn't in the same position as the Polish driver because Lemos sits behind him with 281. So 10 points separate 1 and 2 overall. So we're just about to pull up halfway to the season next time around. So we'll see what the gaps look like then. For silver, Cairns has 236 points, only 13 points above Abelstead, who has 223. Naderpel, not as fortunate, 38 points behind with 185 to his name. For the Pro-Ams, Julian has a very solid buffer, the second highest buffer, I think, throughout the standings, at least in the top 3. He has 228 over Florindo's 175. 24 points separate Florindo from Visser, who has 151. Then down into the amateurs, it is very close in that top 2. Rosas and Louis separated by 6 points, 135 and 129 points respectively. And then 28 points sets Salingback from second place, 201. As far as I'm concerned, all those drivers have showed up. So, I mean, Partez has already laid his claim to this championship very early on. Do you think that Cuthbert or Lemos, seeing as how close they are in the standings to each other, do you think that they're going to be able to maybe find a way around, or is this going to be sort of a Max Verstappen situation for Partez?
Nick, it's a long championship. And I've been in the situation where I've led a championship by basically over a race win. I had a lead that was higher than the amount of points you would get for a race win, and I still lost that lead. Because things do happen, unexpected things do happen. And even if you are a fast boy, even if Partez is doing everything right, I mean, there's just a tiny little mistake he has to make, or a tiny little bit of bad luck he has to catch to absolutely ruin one of his races and basically shrink his lead all the way down. Not that I would wish that on him, but it's a long season, it's a long championship, and we're still way too early to call anything like that.
Okay. All right. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, we've seen, like you said, we've seen things happen like that. Maybe you'd run away with it. I know over in NA, Dornelis is one of those drivers that can do something like that. You had your season. Very unfortunate. But yeah, so long way to go. And after this, we're going to be going right next door to France. We know the storied history of both of those countries and their circuits, respectively, Nurburgring and Paul Ricard. So we'll see how that goes out. Maybe it'll be sunny, maybe windy because they're on a plateau, and that seems to be PR's best thing to do. But the rain continues to pelt down on these drivers here in Germany. 3 minutes to go in qualifying. Julian has retaken provisional pole at 2:06.35, 200ths ahead of Krebs. Julian looks like has gotten a promotion up from Pro-Am, so it looks like things have changed in the time that I just realized that it took me to read things. Sutter is in position 3 right now, just a little bit over a quarter of a second behind, and then Lemos sticks within the 3/10. Rochfeld, though, amateur driver, 5th place. I mean, that's pretty big, especially for a classification such as that.
I was looking at him in P2 just a few minutes ago and was very impressed. It's a shame he hasn't quite been able to hold that. This lap that he has on the board right now, that 207.030, that is what he's had on the board for quite a while. That is what put him in P2 for, well, a little while. But the other drivers have been able to get a little bit faster to definitely get into those 206s by quite a bit. We'll see. Still a little less than 2 minutes on the clock, so still time for Rockfeld to maybe claw his way back and maybe set another blistering lap like he did with the one he's got right now.
Well, so far, 4 drivers in the 206s. Rushfeld is at a 207.03, so just a little bit of time to chip off. And I know we always talk about lap times. Oh, it's just a 10th. Oh, it's just a 100th. But actually taking that time is easier said than done, I'd like to think. Rosas is 10th at the moment, 207.91. Just popped a 208 there. So losing a little bit of time. Oteo, another driver who just finished a lap. Looks like he's gone wide, so that'll be a lap nullified. 11th for him. Florindo down in P12. Not what he wants. Babarin 13th. The 888 trying to find a little bit of pace here. Fedka, another German driver, in 14th. Phillips in the pits in 15th. Cairns out there right now, 16th position. Is going to be starting another flying lap, so we'll leave him there. Brun in 17th with that 211, so the rain very tricky. Ricky Liu from Hong Kong, the 37 driver, 212.15, just set that personal best there. And then Dorn and Saling have yet to set a time. Saling a 217.01, but it was invalid going out of track limit, so this will be his lap. I think he'll have one more after this. He should have enough time. I would be surprised if he didn't. Unless he does another 217, then he won't have any time. But crosses the line, goes into 19th. This is the lap. He has to improve here. And Christian Dorn will not be able to, so he's out. He'll be down in 20th position. Not sure what's going on there, but there aren't a lot of improvements. Sutter goes into P3. Or was in P3, so he did not improve there. Let's check in with Fedka, who's 14th, crosses the line, stays 14th. And there is not a lot of green deltas out there. Cairns, though, has one of them.
Let's have a look on board with Cairns. Oh, he is stuck behind a fellow McLaren. Can't quite tell who that is. Is that McLaren on a valid lap as well? It seems like it, because he is not letting Cairns past. And Cairns is, yeah, visibly stuck behind him and does abort his lap there. All right, that is unfortunate. It's Louis, 18th. So definitely does not have to abort his lap. Still running well, although that was a little unfortunate with the gravel on the exit there. But Nick, you gotta tell us if that is a green delta on him, because I can't tell right now. But not far behind him, I'll tell you, Partes is on a green delta, by the way.
Well, he was on a green delta, but that little misstep has put him half a second behind, so his lap pretty much done. It's just on Partes right now. He's got a few tenths. This could put him into the 206s. It should put him into the 206s. Should easily put him into 5th place as he crosses the line out of the final corner.
Not a good final corner.
Nope. No, he's just going to miss out. He improves, but it's not going to be enough to overtake. For that 5th place, we get pushed into the starting grid. Simon, it's time for one of my favorite things to do. Not quite the same as a track walk, but why not a grid walk? Let's make it a little bit more fun. So we'll pop on here, and it is 8 p.m. It is pretty dark out, and I'm sure that the rain is not going to help in the slightest.
But those reflections of the head and taillights in the wet, even in the dark now, those are beautiful. But speaking of beautiful, you go ahead, you show us the beautiful liveries. Have fun.
Oh, I always do. You know me when I have fun with these grid walks, NA, EU. Maybe someday I'll get to do an AP should things happen. But it's Alan Julian from Mexico that takes your pole position here in Germany. A very dominant performance. Fabian Krebs, a hometown driver here in Germany, is lining up P2. Alexander Sutter had a very strong opening, but couldn't find an improvement, but his lap was enough for P3. Bruno Lemos from Portugal joins him on that second row of the grid. Daniel Rochfeld, amateur driver in the Aston Martin, has found his place 5th overall in qualifying. Very solid result from the Briton. Partes from Poland is lining up 6th. He did improve, but it wasn't enough to overtake, but he'll be more than happy with that result. Ryan Cuthbert and Rasmus Abelstead, 7th and 8th for them. Nasser Asmar and Marco Rama, excuse me, will be rounding out the top 10, so they're going to look to make some noise there, especially in the midfield. And then we drop into the next 10 drivers. It's Timoteo and Ricardo Florindo, 11th and 12th. Peter Van Beveren, Finn Fedka make it row 7 for themselves. Charles Phillips, Yvonne Cairns, 15th and 16th, respectively. Victor Brun and Ricky Louis. We had Louis there in that final bit of qualifying. He was on an improvement, but just lost it towards the end, so he's going to be lining up 18th position. Jonathan Sowling did get a lap in right at the end, so that's enough for 19th. Christian Dorn, however, not setting a lap time at all, so he is going to be starting from the very back of the grid, position number 20, and we'll see what these drivers can do once the green lights go. But ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, of course, a quick shout out to Simrigs for sponsoring Season 14 of the Sprint Series. We've had them on for the last few seasons now, and I gotta say, we have had a lot of fun keeping them on. Out of Melbourne, Australia, these guys are going to be servicing all of Australia and New Zealand. And if you happen to be like Simon, myself, or any of these other drivers, if you're looking to upgrade your rig or maybe get just a couple of little additions to it, well, they've got you covered. Send them an email. They'd be more than happy to do some business with you. Of course, if you happen to be one of our OOR Patreon members, you guys are getting 5% off your in-store purchases. These things not cheap by any means. Highly suggest you take advantage of that. But again, thank you to Simrigs for sponsoring another season of the Sprint Series. Simon, we are out and away. We are rolling around on track. Julian playing safety car, and you can see the spray being kicked up. How is that going to affect visibility as these drivers head around, especially at the start? And consider the track surface. It's raining. It's going to rain even harder in 10 minutes, even harder than that in 30 minutes. It's going to be dangerous out there.
It's going to be tough. I mean, right now the rain is not that bad, but like you said, it's going to be getting heavier and heavier as the race goes on. And also, we've talked about the standing water in quali. Right now, you see the spray coming off of those cars, especially as we go down into turn 1, a very, very slow hairpin. Not being able to see what's happening in front of you is very tough. So, on one hand, you want to be getting on the brakes as early as possible just to play it safe. On the other hand, obviously you don't want to gut the brakes too early, allow someone else to slip through. So, it's gonna be a bit of a challenge to balance both your, well, competitiveness and your sense of self-preservation going into turn 1. But something I would like to draw your attention to, Partas, the championship leader by quite a margin, as we've learned, is starting in P6. Might not seem like the best place to start for the championship leader, but then the man right behind him in championship is also right behind him on the track. So Cuthbert has a little bit of a job to do if he wants to claw his way back onto the heels of Partas. But I gotta say, I was watching Partas in quali a little bit, and he didn't seem all that steady. We've had quite a few, well, not quite a few, but we've had a handful of spins in there in quali. Let's hope he's not going to repeat those in the race. Let's hope he can find a little bit more of a steady rhythm. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting race. It's very likely going to be wet until the end, so we're going to have to just find the rhythm, find a way to push through the spray, and try to stay safe and stay out of the gravel and stay out of the grass.
Well, that first turn always tricky. Even in the dries, I think we've had some problems in the past. Break points being moved all over the place, especially when you get towards like the midfield. You get drivers bunched up, and the rain is not going to make this any easier of a task as it continues to come down here in Germany. 60 minutes on the clock, a mandatory stop. That pit window opens in 5 minutes, and it'll close 5 minutes from the end of the race. Ladies and gentlemen, around the final corner for the only time here on the outlap, it's Julian on top though. Krebs joins him, and the green flags fly immediately here at the Nurburgring. It's going to be a pretty solid getaway for your top 6, already rocketing down to turn number 1. They got a little bit of a lift from these drivers as we head into that first corner. They want to make sure they line it up perfectly, not go bowling. As fun as Wii Sports is, it just can't happen here in the OOR. But there is going to be a very big lunge there. One of the, I believe one of the McLarens, or one of the Ferraris, rather, on the inside, 3 wide there as we have someone going off in the background. Lemos right now is trying to make up some ground into the Mercedes arena. That was very close there, almost catastrophic there. As we head through the extremely slow corners here at the Nurburgring. It's been a solid getaway from all the drivers up top. As we head towards the back of the field, though, things are starting to bunch off a good bit. Florindo going up from 12th to 10th here in the last few corners. We'll see who the big losers were, but there has been no contact. Drivers very good about keeping things neat and tidy. We're already racing here. It has gotten pretty good, although... Oh, no, never mind. Sorry. The stupid thing updates. I thought Julian was down in last position. I'm like, he was just in first. But no, we've got these times finally updating, coming through. It appears as though Stalling is one of the drivers that lost out. But the gap's already starting to grow a little bit. Julian has about a second and then some over second place. But Christian Dorn, God, look at just how much water's being kicked up right now.
And Nick, I have terrible news. Our man Charles Phillips has not had a smooth start to the race at all. He's gotten spun on the exit of the Mercedes arena and then had someone else plow right into the side of him. He is now second to last, only because he barged his way through the car that is now in last. So there might not only be damage on his car, there might also be a little bit of a penalty coming his way. As we have a big off. Oh, goddamn. Okay, there we go. Who was that? That was Dorn. Not sure what happened there. Was that a touch on the back that shoved him off the track on this little straight and right into the wall? That was tough.
Let's check the replays behind Brun right now. Oh, the car just understeers. Yeah, it goes wide, slides across. Yep. Big hit. And that's what can happen in these conditions, those front tires just not getting the grip they need. And you turn the wheel, the car turns, but not as much as you would have liked. So the 256 down in 19th position. Baron in the pit lane, probably having some technical issues. But Christian Dorn, not the start he wanted. We're going to run back up a little bit. Fedka with Phillips going down the inside, almost a touch from both of these guys. Charles Phillips right now on the recovery drive. He has a lot of work to do to get back to where he was. Despite that front damage, though, hasn't seemed to have affected his Lamborghini all too much. So that's, well, very good news for him. Check in Abelstead, 6th position right behind. It's Cuthbert. This man has lost a little bit of time because between himself and, the car that sits between himself and 5th, Abelstead, of course, but in 5th place is Partez. And if you're trying to overtake in the championship, sitting behind the leader is not going to help you out all too much.
That is absolutely right. Talking about that kink that we're going to come up to very soon again, I talked about how that is easy even in the rain to go flat through, but you have to find the right line. In the dry, it doesn't matter that much when you turn in. In the wet, you definitely need to hit that point where you turn in. And if you are extremely wide on entry already, you turn in way too late, then your car is just not gonna forgive that. So that is what's gonna happen. But right now, at least on board with Cuthbert, we've gotten through that pretty clearly.
Yep, everybody is, well, doing what they can as clean as they can with the weather that they've been given. We should be seeing this rain increase in the next 5 minutes, of course. And I feel like that's the last thing these drivers want. They're already suffering enough with the wets. Let's just sprinkle on a little bit more, just to really make sure that everybody has done their practice. I know that we have practice servers set up, and the conditions, I think, are the same as you can expect on race day, or we have separate ones. Either way, these drivers have had time to hopefully practice wet weather, and if they haven't, it's been sort of a trial by fire. Victor Brun right now, there's a spin there. Oteo, I think he had a little bit of a touch there on the back of the Audi, and that puts him around. And now Brun is in the attacking position as he goes along side by side with Louis through Mercedes Arena. Very slow from both of these guys, but still keeping it very clean. Job well done from both of them. But it is the Hong Kong driver who's going to get a bit better of an exit. Although Brun, oh, that was going to be very brave if he decided to go onto the grass there, but it would have been, I would say, not ideal.
No, he has plenty of time to set that overtake up and try to claw that place back, but smart decision to pull out there and not try to get past on the grass. And he might be able to get past now. Oh, Louis has gone very wide on entry, and Brun has absolutely made use of that. Hasn't quite done it though, as now Charles Phillips tries to get his nose in there as well. We are trying to go side by side into the Schumacher S, never going side by side through there, which is exactly why Brun is quite a few car lengths back on Louis right now again. But Phillips is right on his heels, and he is trying to go around the outside of this left-hander right here. He is making it stick, now has the inside into the right-hander. Yeah, Brun is going relatively wide. Absolutely, he's got this covered. There we go. Beautiful overtake.
That, just the respect from all three of those drivers to keep it clean, not bump, was incredible to watch. Phillips taking advantage of both of the drivers ahead, battling to gain a position, bounding over the curbs here at the chicane. He's going to be looking at the McLaren driver next. That was incredible. All of these guys, regardless of where you classify them, they're going to be going and doing some great battling. Ryan Cuthbert has Abelstead to deal with, trading positions right now. He was 6th, now he's running 7th, trying to stick it on the inside, but unfortunately the Mercedes has the power, gets around the outside. Cuthbert down to 7th, Abelstead up to 6th, but I don't think this battle is going to be quite done yet, because Cuthbert, not a man to give up. We've seen some unfortunate happenings in the season and seasons past for this guy. He is not someone you can keep down. He is going to be fighting his way back for this position, if not on track, maybe looking for Fedkazov, maybe looking to do it in the pit lane. Timoteo pulls up on the Danish driver Brun. I don't know if he has the ability right now to keep these cars behind. He is just slowly slipping back in the field. Yeah, it's not looking good. Timoteo starting to eye up this position.
Meanwhile, I need to draw your attention to Julian, who is absolutely dominating this race right now. If you look at the times, let's see, the fastest driver outside of Julio right now is Lemos in P4 with a 206.3 on his fastest lap. Julian, 205.7.
2 seconds, Simon. Sorry, it's just Louis and Phillips going. Try to go through the Schumacher S. They make contact. They both go wide. It's the Hong Kong driver that gets caught up in that. Brun as well loses a position. That gives Fedka and Oteo a chance now. This battling for position. Phillips all over the road right now. That is not what you want to see. And, yeah, that's just gone horribly. And did we just lose the race? We just lost the race leader.
We absolutely did lose him. We absolutely just did lose the race leader. I was on board with him, and he was starting to lag out, and I think his internet connection has just completely, well, kicked the buckets. He is out of the race. That is absolutely
he's back.
Dressing.
I think
he is back, but he is definitely not back in P1. He is back in the pits. Yep, that is right.
Now.
He was absolutely dominating this race. He was looking smooth as hell. Quite a bit faster than any other car on track right now, and then, well, that happens, and that is exactly what I was talking about. You were talking about how being that far in the lead by Partes, I mean, might that already set him up for the championship lead? No, not at all, because this is what can happen to anyone out there.
I know it sucks when it happens. Louis in the pits. He's got some pretty decent damage there, so he's gonna get that sorted out. Probably get onto a new set of tires. Julian, if he's hit drive, he's got to wait a few minutes. It's not going to be fun. He has a long way to go. He's already going to be a lap down, and probably another one by the time he gets back out on circuit, if he gets back out on circuit. For his chances in the championship, that's not going to do him any favors. Partes in 4th. The gap would have been closed up a bit, but this might be a slight turning point. Maybe. We'll see how things play out as the season develops. We're just about to hit halfway when we get back out on track next week or actually no, I think we're off next week. I don't remember off the top.
I'm not sure.
Well, either way, yeah, championship is going to pull apart a little bit more now. Sutter really just chucking that Lambo over the curbs there. As much bouncing as that thing has done, I'm surprised that we have not seen someone spin out sooner.
Oh, well, especially in the chicane. I mean, it's a testament to the control these drivers have that we've had a pretty clean and consistent chicane so far. Because even the dry, that chicane is a death trap. But we're going down the start-finish straight of Rackfell right now. We might be setting ourselves up for an overtake into turn 1. Well, it's sort of a half cent. These half cents,
no.
yep. These half cents usually don't quite work out because it's hard to communicate. If you really go for it, if you really send it, you definitely make it very clear to your opponent that you are going to try to overtake them. If you're only going halfway, then it's always hard for the car in front to figure out what exactly is going on. But well, things go back to as they were. We did have a little bit of a touch, but we got off with just a little bit of a slapper on the wrist there.
Yep, that's good. Able to give the position back because, well, it wasn't spun out too much. Abelstead really starting to come under fire now. Cuthbert has a drive. He has some pace, but not enough as we head into the Dunlop curve. It's going to be hard. And right behind, look at that. That's Asmar as well. So he could be joining in on the fray here. If these two battle enough behind him, you do see Rosas and Rochfeld, so they're keeping each other nice in company. There was a yellow flag out for a little bit. Cuthbert loses the back end of the McLaren, or sorry, the Ferrari, and that does lose him some time both ahead and behind. More so behind. We could be having a five-way fight if these gaps really start to close up, or at the very least a 4. Abelstead more than happy to have some drivers behind take a bit of issue to the circuit. Rochfeld, you saw the speed he had, but just not when he needed it. Had to get off the gas a little bit. So into the chicane. We'll see if anyone up ahead has any sort of errors. We do. That appears to be Rosas who went off. Thankfully...
That was Asmar. That was
Asmar, excuse me.
Going absolutely way too deep into the chicane, but he did manage to keep it together. Didn't lose any positions, but, well, that's gotten him disconnected from Cuthbert a tiny bit again. But looking at the times, he has done the exact same time, despite that incident, as Cuthbert. So,
and there's the touch. Asmar spins out Rosas. That is not what you wanted to do. I don't know if he just... If Asmar braked a bit earlier than he would have thought, or Rosas was late on the brakes. Either way, that's definitely going to draw the ire of the stewards, I think.
Absolutely. Luckily, it wasn't a huge spin for Asmar. He did lose 2 positions by that, but he did get back on the track relatively quickly. But yeah, I'd say, from the looks of it, Asmar didn't do much wrong there. Obviously, with that sort of situation, it's very, very rarely the car in front that's to blame. Rosas just got a little bit too confident on his braking point there and did overshoot it just a tiny little bit. But the stewards are going to deal with that accordingly, and then there's not going to be any hard feelings.
Oh, I'm sure, of course not. Rosas did get a little bit wide. That does close things up, but not really enough for an attacking move to be commenced. Brun is in the pit lane right now for that first pit stop. Ooh, Rochfeld, that was not what he wanted to do. I think he got a little bit of understeer there and more as he goes through the chicane a bit further. Julian is back out on track, but he is 2 laps down off the leader and a lap behind Ricky Louie. So if he does get the overtake done, that's going to be impressive. Right now, Rochfeld going around the outside there of the McLaren. Clean little move that is. And that is a pretty reasonable... Or no, sorry, he was... I think Asmar was on the attack. Rosas.
Yeah, that was Asmar. I mean, Asmar is a much, much better exit out of the left-hander, and he is... Look at that. Oh, but Rackfell is trying to come back on him. Now has the inside into the final corner. Almost a touch there again on the rear right. But Asmar comes away victorious. I mean, it looks like Asmar has so much more grip right now in that car. I gotta say, Rackfell, look at that slipstream though. Asmar is not defending. He is confident. And, I mean, looking at that, he has every right to be, because Rackfell absolutely a little bit too optimistic. missed his braking point, and Asmar doesn't really need to do much there except just his braking point and keep his position. But back to what I was saying, Asmar looks like he has so much grip right now. He has a much superior exit to Rackfell in that left-hander where things all began, and then tried to send a little bit of something down into the right-hander that followed right after. Rackfell smartly got out of the way, went for a very wide line, and kept that position for just a few corners, but as we saw, not that many corners. And now Asmar already 7/10 ahead. Let's see if he is able to claw his way back onto Rosas, the man who has bumped him 2 positions down. So I do hope there's not going to be any retaliation there, except the retaliation of getting their position back cleanly.
Yeah, can we just? I mean, Asmar side by side through that final chicane. You don't do that. Even in the dry, I don't think you would do that. So, like you said, so much more grip on McLaren and the confidence he has in himself. That's what's given him such a massive advantage through that little battle. We join your top 3 at the moment. Oteo picks up a 10-second penalty. I believe that was for contact earlier on, so we'll be just getting some of those penalties through. I'm sure as the stewards look at everything, a lot of work goes into dishing out the proper penalty. So, Oteo, speeding in the pit lane, 10-second penalty. Charles Phillips, also speeding in the pit lane. I wonder if that's actually right or wrong. Either way, he's got 10 seconds, but if it isn't for speeding in the pit lane because he hasn't been there, then it would be for contact. So I think our bot is having a bit of a drink right now. We are in Germany, and as far as I know, I think the beer is pretty cheap over there. So maybe taking a bit of the, not royalties, what's the word I'm thinking of? Facilities? No. Whatever. Either way, I think the bot is having some fun. It's Christian Dorn looks like he'll be picking up a 10-second penalty for out of position at the start, but he's not here, so it doesn't matter.
The beer is cheap if you know where to go. If you go to the wrong place like the Oktoberfest, then you might as well just throw your money out the window. But we're not there. We're not at the Oktoberfest. We're at the Nurburgring. I couldn't tell you how pricey the beer is around here, but I don't think many people are going to make use of the beer at the Nurburgring, as driving is a much more productive pastime than drinking. And I do hope that none of our drivers so far have been drinking, but we have more penalties coming in this time for Saling. Another 10-second penalty as well.
Out of position at the start for the 73. So anybody with penalties right now, those will get served at at their pit stop. So that'll be good news for them. Better to get it before that mandatory stop than after, because if it happens after, well, at that point you got to start picking a new strategy depending on how big the penalty is and what the gaps look like ahead and behind, and how many cars especially. So an extra 10 seconds on top of the 30 that is standard shouldn't be too bad, I think, for these drivers. They should be able to manage it just fine. Obviously, if there's damage on those cars, they're going to be repairing that, so that'll add more time. But I highly doubt it. Of course, things can change, though, in the race, lap after lap. Still with, we were with Asmar. Oteo right now, one of those drivers with the penalty through the chicane. So, Simon, we got about 40 minutes to go here. It's still raining. It's going to rain more in 10 minutes, and then it's going to stabilize, it looks like. Is there really a pit strategy at this point, or is it just sort of, hey, do whatever, go in whenever?
I mean, wet tires follow basically the same rules as dry tires in terms of they are going to wear, and if everything else remains the same, then it's best to cut the race into 2 halves and change your tires in the middle, so you have 2 equal stints with the freshest tires possible. I mean, in these conditions, the rain isn't really expected to change. I would absolutely not believe in the miracle that the rain is going to stop before the end of the race. And even if it's going to remain wet until the end of the race. So if you've done everything right, if you've hit your pressures, if you have your tires at the pressures that you want them to be at, then just I'd say, cut the race down the middle or try to figure out some kind of competitive strategy with your pit stops, like trying to go for an undercut if you know that you might be able to overtake the car in the front, or you might be able to go for a defensive pit stop if the car behind is a little bit faster. If you haven't gotten your pressures all the way right, like I said, every rain session is different. It's always an estimate with the pressure settings you're putting into your tires before you go out onto the wet track. If you haven't gotten them perfectly right, then you just would want to go a little bit earlier into the pits and make sure you get those correct as early as possible. But we've had 3 drivers in the pits right now so far: Fetke, Brun, and Louis. Can't quite remember which one of those was due to damage and which one was due to any other decision. But most of the drivers seem to be content with their driver at tire pressures, so I'd say we're probably going to see a huge wave of pit stops in the middle of the race, and then maybe a few more trying to hold out a little bit later into the race if they have a clean track in front of them and just can do their laps.
Yeah, we'll see what the strategies end up looking like. Got some news, though, from the chat. The penalties are for starting positions and speeding, so those contact penalties, those are going to be post-race, so that's why I tend to hold off on getting the results until like the night before, the day of the race, just to make sure that all the penalties are applied and drivers are moved around. I'm sure there's a couple drivers out there I can already see maybe grabbing some more penalty points by the next race, which we do not have next week. So there is a week off between now and there's 2 weeks rather, between now and Paul Ricard's. So plenty of time to really dial in the settings a bit. Simon, when you raced, did you find the bye weeks helpful, or did you think they were more of a hindrance?
No, I like them quite a bit, because obviously we all have other things going on besides racing. Racing every week, at least for me personally, was a little bit stressful at times with all the other stuff going on, so I would always appreciate a bye week, so you have just a few days, a little over a week, I guess, maybe, to relax, and then you can get back into the practice for the next race with a fresh mind, and you didn't have to basically start practicing for the next race right after the last one.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It was always a bit annoying sometimes when you had to, I would finish a race and immediately the next day I would hop on and start practicing for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I think I had a couple bye weeks, if I remember correctly, when I was out there, but, well, I don't really need to worry about it because, as long as I know when the broadcasts are, we're good to go. We're rejoining Fabian Krebs right now in the lead here. Bruno Lemos has been just slowly chiseling away at this lead. His laps have been quite a good bit faster by almost half a second, it looks like. About half a second or so. Right now, he is really going to be showcasing that skill and speed through the Mercedes arena right now. It's equal machinery, I assume, maybe slightly different setup changes, but still 2 McLarens here. If there's a spot to overtake, it certainly could be coming up, but if not, it's going to be a long while before there's really a chance for an overtake. But just like that, the lead, much like the headlights, starting to disappear from Lemos as Krebs pulls away. And yeah, he's got quite the task ahead of him if he wants to win this race. Not only does he have to keep the Portuguese driver behind, but he's got to time that pit stop. If he goes in too early, he might end up losing too much time, and by the time, say, Lemos comes in, he may not be able to get the lead back.
Looking from the outside, I mean, even now that Krebs has managed to open up the gap a tiny bit again, it's looking like Lemos is able to get into Krebs' head a tiny bit. He's making a few small mistakes that always put Lemos right on the back of him again. So Lemos looks comfortable. He's definitely looking comfortable in this position right behind Krebs. You can see sometimes he's going for wildly different lines than Krebs, just to try to get a different exit and give himself a bit of an advantage. He's definitely in a fighting mood. He's definitely doing everything he can. Although Krebs right now on this lap he has stabilized a little bit. He was 3/10 faster than Lemos, so we'll see if things close back down again and we do get a battle. After all, we do have to get past Sulling right now. What is happening? What is happening? There's got to be some sort of hardware issue or something going on, because Krebs is just pulled off to the side.
That wheel just snapped back into place. I think he did. Let's take a look. That wheel, that's got to be hardware or something. I don't know. Definitely on a controller at the very least. Yeah, it just sticks to the side, so something's gone wrong, and then, yep, snaps back into place. So it looks like it has been a hardware issue. I thought for a moment he had spun.
Oh, that seems like, I don't know. I would assume that that he is on a wheel, and I must imagine that his wheel just turned off, and he very, very quickly, and I'm impressed by that, just switched to his keyboard and turned himself off the track that way instead of just stopping on the track. So, I mean, what is happening to our first place drivers in this race right now? Something we haven't even gotten halfway through, and we've lost 2 cars in first place due to there's just absolutely random technical issues. So there's some kind of curse at play here in the Eifel at the Nurburgring, and let's see if it's gonna hit Lemos before the end is the race is at its end.
First place is cursed, so if you're not in first, you got very good chances of making it to the end of the race. Yeah, Lemos, we're gonna keep an eye on him, of course, and I mean that opens a gap up already. 4.5 seconds to Sutter, that's fine for him. Partez in the pit lane, he's got very significant front end damage. Unless it, how long has he been in the pit? He's been in the pits for a while, I think.
What has happened there?
I don't know. I mean, maybe
I'm gonna have to go into a replay and see if I can figure out for you guys what has gone on with Partez.
Because he was running in 5th position, and now he's all the way down in 12th. And I know that's for pit stops, but that front end looked, you know, smashed up a little bit. Anyways, Sutter, Abelstead, Solling come into the pits. What was that? I don't know if he had an off somewhere or something, but he has.
Oh, he has.
I'll give us the 411. What happened?
Oh, he absolutely has. It's a shame you can't see that right now. Going onto the back straight just before the chicane. Yep, just on the exit of that corner leading onto the back straight, the car just kind of snapped on the rear. He was fighting it. He was going left, right, in the end. The lack of grip won, the rain won, and careened him off the track into the wall. So from P4 into the pits with damage. I mean, at least he's gotten his pit stop out of the way right now. And he is still in P12, so still not completely out of the equation. I mean, he is the leader of those drivers that have done their pit stops so far. But we are getting into pit season right now. We have 4 cars in the pits right now, so we're going to see very, very quickly how he's going to position himself, how Partez is going to position himself in that the class of pit stoppers.
Well, Sutter is out, Abelsted's out, Ateo's still sitting there, Solling as well.
And Sutter has gotten an SG30 a pit speeding penalty. He is the leader of the cars that have already done their pit stops, but he has gotten himself a pit speeding penalty, which is going to be changed from an SG30 to a 10-second penalty, I believe, by the stewards, but that is still going to hurt him quite a bit.
Yep. Let's see, Partez, even with the drivers getting those pit stops done, he is only in position 12, so he hasn't moved at all. Phillips still has to pit. He'll have 10 seconds added on. Sutter, of course, that 10 seconds for speeding. And then it's Julian down 17th that still has to pit, unfortunately. And then it's your top 8 that will have to clear it at some point. We are about halfway, so your prediction of drivers coming in around the halfway point has seemed to have held true. We ride with Finn Fedka right now on the front bumper. He's running position 13. I believe just up ahead there is Partez. Looking at Daniel Rushfeld, 5th place behind Rosas. So these two guys have been relatively close to each other throughout this race. There's been I wouldn't say so much of a Constantina effect as it is you know, someone gains for a while and then they stop, and then the next lap they start losing. So I think for right now, these guys are two that we should definitely be looking for towards the end of the race, and especially when the pit stops come, because if you're following someone this closely, you know, the question becomes, do you mirror their pit stop, bank on having a closer pit box to the start of the pit lane, or do you stay out and just try to put in either an extremely good in lap, or do you just slowly build it over the course of a few laps and then go in?
It depends on how comfortable you feel that you might be faster without the spray. Right now, it's about a 1.2 second gap between them, so the spray is playing into this battle, but it's not it shouldn't be a huge hindrance to Rackfell. So, well, he has gained quite a bit right now, though. I mean, like you said, he's gaining, he's losing, he's gaining, he's losing from lap to lap. I believe there's a good chance that he might be faster if there was no car ahead of him. In the rain, that's always something to think about. So if Rosas goes into the pits, depends if Rackfell feels like he could go faster without Rosas in front of him, or if he feels like he is just kind of matching him on pace and just kind of doing exactly the same thing. In which case, he's gonna want to mirror his pit stop as best as possible to just not give himself a tire disadvantage.
Well, the thing is, he's been lapping about 2/10 slower, so maybe he comes in and there you go. He's gonna try to undercut. Absolutely, he's gonna try to undercut. So went into the wall, I think.
That was just the tiniest hip check of the wall. That looked like he was gonna, well, go nose first into the wall, which is something that is not that hard to do actually around here at the Nurburgring. But he has managed to save it just in time and just give the wall a tiny little bit of a kiss with his rear left wheel arch, which might not have given him any damage at all. If it's given him damage, then it's negligible. So not too much to worry about that.
We had something similar happen in Kyalami, a couple drivers into the pit lane, just sending in a little bit too hot. So that's not going to be good. Bruin is having an issue right now. The game called them as into the pit lane, and well, that's not the case. So a spin on the exit of the chicanes, just causing a lot of problems for the 112. Has to let Mercedes of Abelstead through. Lemos went into the pit lane. Down in P4 right now, Rochfeld in the pits. Florindo Phillips comes into the pits, so he'll be sitting there for a good bit, especially with the penalty. That just leaves Rosas and Asmar that have to come in. I know Julian has a pit stop to take care of. I don't think he's going to do it. He's already in last. He's a lap down off of, he's a lap down off of 14th, and then he's 2 laps down from the leaders. So I think he might, if he does get an overtake done, then good on him, but I think he'll just run this race and take a penalty because it's not really going to matter.
Yeah, this is a what could have been race for Julian. I mean, there's no guarantee that he could have finished the race without running into any trouble and without making any mistakes, but as solid as he looked in those first few laps, I mean, he had like, a 5-6 second gap built before he had that disconnect, so he looked all set to absolutely dominate this race, so you've got a feel for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a perfect race from him from here on. Cuthbert, though, pulls into the pits. Cuthbert does have fastest lap, has taken it away from the Mexican driver, 2:05.57. So the track is probably a little bit more manageable at this point. Rain's going to be letting off in about 30. I think it's going to be a little bit before then, because I did see it pop up earlier, so maybe within the last 20 or so it'll be a bit less rain, but still plenty of rain to deal with. Asmar and Rosas, the only 2 drivers, both McLarens, have not pitted yet. You just saw Rosas there top a shot for a split second. But for the time being, Asmar in the lead of the race. So there you go. I don't know if he's had the chance to hear Asmar is leading the race, but there you go. There's your time in the sun. Even though the cloud coverage is pretty severe here in Germany. We join Florindo and Partez. Partez has made up a couple positions right now through pit stops. Eyeing up a P10. But he has to catch up to that man right there, and then just up ahead, I believe that is one of the McLarens. I don't think that's Cairns. That might actually be... Is that an Aston Martin I saw? No, that looks to be Louis. So it is one of the McLarens. Oh, Partez. That's a big moment there. Almost spinning out. Coming up to the chicane. Florindo completely disregards the chicane and just hands the position to Partez.
But good job on keeping things safe there. Being off in the grass in a corner like that, it's very easy to just go spearing back on the track out of control and take another car with you. But he handled things well. He got it slowed down in the grass, and he was able to get on the track safely behind Partez without causing any trouble.
I think the worst
Meanwhile,
thing...
Brun has...
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, Brun has had a little bit of trouble. He has had a spin in the Mercedes arena just there, but he has gotten going again, and I don't think he has lost any places by doing that.
No, he's stayed in 14th. He's had the last couple laps have been very, very difficult for him to actually hold down. I was gonna say the one thing that that sucks the most is when, you know, if Partez had spun there, and then he gets up to the chicane and he sees that that Florindo has also gone off and lost time. It's, you know, you just get right back to square one. I've had that happen where, you know, I've had an issue and I've, you know, spun out, and then I catch up to the guy in front and he's just coming out of a spin. It's like, wow, if I had just held it a little bit longer, I would have had the free position. Louis steps out of the way. Partez, who does flash both the blinkers, a sign of saying thank you. We always like to see the little bit of respect and good gestures from these drivers. Asmar Rosas in the pit lane. You can see just how close they are. Their pit boxes right next to each other. But Bruno Lemos will retake the lead. There's Julian behind. Sutter will take P2. Cuthbert will take third back. Abelstead should be going up into fourth. Rochefeld might come out near both of these guys. Asmar out of the pit lane, so he's down in fifth. So let's see who is going to be close enough. No, Rochefeld isn't even anywhere near him. So it looks like Rosas could lose out on his position. Check out the back. There's the Aston Martin. Is it going to be side by side to turn number one? No, it's not. Rochefeld round the outside, although completely missed his brake point off onto the gravel temporarily. So the 777 rolls those sevens, luckily, and comes out ahead. Although we do have some penalties coming through. Sutter gets 10 seconds. And I think Rosas will also pick up 10. Were those for speeding, Simon, you think?
Yep, they absolutely were. That was a little, well, unclean from Brackfell. That was not quite the best way to get that position, and it didn't work getting that position around the outside on the pit exit. But doesn't matter, even if he, didn't succeed with that move. Rosas did get a pit speeding penalty, got a little too hard on the entry to the pits, and where is he gone?
It's checking the other side of the circuit, it looked like.
But still in one piece. So yeah, Rosas 10-second penalty for pit speeding, aside by the stewards. Obviously the game wants to give you either a drive-through or an SG30. Our stewards are a little more friendly than that, and since, well, we don't really endanger any virtual lives by speeding in the pits, then we don't have to be that serious with the pit speeding penalties. So 10 seconds for him, that's definitely going to drop him behind Rachfel. Oteo, 10 seconds and 1/10 right behind Rosas. So Rosas has to pick up the pace if he wants to stay in front of Oteo. And Oteo has to pick up the pace if he wants to, well, get a piece of that cake and benefit from Rosas. But Rosas has spun, so I think even if he does pick up the pace now, I think Rosas has just, on top of that penalty, cemented his lost position to Oteo, who is now right behind him. So there might even be an overtake on track, but it doesn't need to be.
You saw going through. We talked earlier about the chicane, how planted some of these cars are. I think Rosas just got on the throttle a little too early after the bounce, and that's what spun him out. One thing I wanted to mention, especially with the Nurburgring, the sort of the pit line the sign almost is hidden at times. I don't know if it's just me, but you come in and you see one line, you think that's it, and then you say, oh no, it's not quite, and then you speed up, and then by the time you see the next line, sometimes it's a little too late, and well, the issues go from bad to worse, and that's how you end up getting that speeding penalty. Louis picks up 5 seconds for ignoring blue flags, so that's gonna cause a little bit of time. I think he has a pretty significant gap over Salling, though, so it doesn't really matter. In fact, he's a full 28 seconds ahead, so hopefully he can maintain that. Oteo, very close to Rosas for the overtake, but had to back out. As long as he stays within 10 seconds, right now he's 0.6 back. He'll easily take position number 7 away. I don't think Cairns is in the same situation. Actually, he's 6 seconds behind, so he could possibly grab a spot. Partez could also benefit. It is barely over 10 seconds. I think it's like maybe 10 1/3 seconds. So if Partez closes up, he could also grab a spot. So Rosas could go from 7th to 11th, or sorry, 10th as Oteo takes to the outer regions of the Nurburgring, and that is not doing him any favors.
Yep, maybe that 10-second penalty got into Rosas' head a little bit, because he did look all kinds of out of shape on that outlap after his pit stop, but he is looking like he's back on track now, and back where he wants to be. So let's see. Right now, Partez is within 10 seconds of Rosas, so we'll see if that is gonna hold true. I mean, we know Partez, he did qualify in P6, so he does have quite a bit of pace. He just had that spin earlier on, which catapulted him all the way down the order. But he should be able to make up a few more positions here. I mean, he is 4 seconds, I believe, behind Cairns. So if he is able to hold things together, then he can catch back up to the heels of Cairns. Last lap, he was 1.7 seconds quicker. That is quite a statement.
That is. He's definitely on a drive right now. Abelstead has slowly been pulling up to Cuthbert. The last lap for Cuthbert was a 2:09, and that was due to a looks like some off-track excursions. 10.6 back from Sutter, though, so that 6/10 buffer is pretty much all the Swiss driver has at this point to try and hold on to P2, but with Cuthbert and his skill level could be pulling up. We'll check when the time deltas on the pylon update as drivers cross timing lines. For Cuthbert, Abelstead, 1.4, probably about 1.5, maybe a little bit more. 7.8 seconds to the leader. So let's see what Cuthbert rolls in with, because if that has gone down, that's bad news. If it goes up, that's good news. If it somehow stays, we don't know. And it's gone up by 2/10, so from 10.6 to 10.8. Oh, and he's very loose there on the exit of the chicane. That was scary, and that's not going to do him any good, because that's just going to open up the gap even more. Cuthbert, though, still with fastest lap, a 2:05.57. The rain going to be letting off as this race gets to its conclusion, and now another half second added on, 11.2, but Sutter can't rest yet. Still has 16 minutes to get to the checkered flag. And across the board, pit stops have been served. Julian getting his done.
Well, things have calmed down a little bit. We've kind of opened up the pack through the pit stops, although Abelstead is about the closest one we've got around here. Abelstead's 1.9 seconds behind Cuthbert. Last lap, he was a little less than half a second quicker than Cuthbert, so there might be something brewing there. But until then, we can perhaps appreciate the way Lemos is just absolutely running away in P1 right now. We did have not quite a battle for P1, but a very close pair at the top of the field. After the pit stops, that is absolutely broken apart. 7.5 seconds is the gap from Lemos to Suter. And even then, Suter has a 10-second penalty on top of that, which right now, if things stay as they are, with Cuthbert being 11 seconds behind, isn't going to cost Suter that position. But it's definitely going to absolutely destroy any hopes that he might have had at gaining P1 back.
Yeah, their laps are roughly about a tenth from each other each way. Abel said to Cuthbert, though, 4/10. So 4/10 a lap, 1.7. I'm not much of a mathematician, but if you keep that pace up, well, you'll be at the station in no time at all with plenty of laps to spare. But that really is kind of the big thing at the moment. And the thing I've noticed about the drivers coming through the chicane is that I think they're starting to let off a little bit more. They're not as willing to take that risk to fully send it, because they know that if they're gonna spin, they're either A, losing all the time to the car in front, or B, someone behind's gonna catch up and overtake. So for right now, it's a bit of a conservative game, I think, for a lot of the field. Abelstead has just gone 3/10 slower, so maybe he's pulling off a little bit too much. And if that's the case, then he's got to get back on the saddle here very quickly, or saying, you know what, I might not be able to catch Cuthbert by the end of this. I might as well hold. And Cuthbert has a spin, and as I say that, well, that's what happens. He gets wide. He's on the green, turns in, and the car's around. So for Abelstead, doesn't even have to work for the position because it's just handed to him on a silver platter.
That was about the best way he could possibly have spun, though, because he was pointed right in the right direction again in one of the slowest corners on the track, so he didn't lose that much time. 2.2 seconds behind Abelstead. Let's see if he can claw that way back.
He could. I think it is possible. His laps have been quicker, a few tenths here and there, so it's going to be close, though, I think. Just about 12 and a half minutes to go. You're 2.1 seconds back, and yeah, he's making these little mistakes. You just saw him run wide there. It's not gonna be easy, and Abelstead is not a driver to, you know, really lay down and let someone through. So if Cuthbert does catch up, first off, laps are just a little bit over 2 minutes. We're running with 12 and a half minutes to go here, so we're looking at maybe another 6 laps. If you're doing 3/10 over 6 laps, that's 1.8 seconds, and I don't know about you, Simon, but I think 1.8 is a little bit less than 2.7, so Cuthbert has to hope Abelstead makes some sort of error before the end of the race, but I don't think that's going to be likely.
We'll see. We can compare these laps. 11.6 by Cuthbert. 6.7 by Abelstead. Just about 5 seconds that Cuthbert lost in that spin. But, he is going very deep into the first corner. So, if he keeps doing that, then no, there's no way he's going to be able to claw his way back to Abelstead. But, let's see. I wouldn't doubt him. I wouldn't say that there's no way. I wouldn't say that he can't get back into the rhythm and find a few tenths there. But, well, 11 minutes to go. He's gonna have to shift into a different gear, but I'm looking forward to maybe seeing it.
Well, 2.8 is the gap. He's got to find the elusive 7th gear. I don't think you get up to 6 on this track. I'm certain. I know the only track you can get to, I think, reasonably, is Paul Ricard and Spa on their straights. So, yeah, he's gonna have to find a way to up the McLaren's acceleration and top end and extra gears in the next 10 minutes. I don't think that's gonna be possible.
Well, there's plenty of tracks where you can get up to 6th gear, but yeah, Nurburgring is not really one of those. None of the straights are super long here. I mean, it depends on your cars. Some cars might be able to get up to 6th on the start-finish straights, depending on the gearing. But yeah, I mean, it is right to say that the straights here are not that long. They're not as long as they may sometimes seem, so the slipstream is not the strongest here. Which means, especially in the wet, it's more of a detriment being stuck behind another car. You probably lose more time in the spray and by just being blinded and in the dirty air around the corners than you gain back by catching a slipstream on the straights.
Yeah, well, if a lot of these drivers aren't in a slipstream. There's a lot of pretty big gaps. I know Fedka just got around Bruin, so there's a little bit of something. There's some front end damage, though, on the 781. So, I mean, it's not affecting him all too much. Louis is a pretty sizable bit of time back. He's a lap down and about a minute or about 10 seconds behind that, so he's got a lot of buffer to work with. So yeah, there's not a chance I think anyone's going to get on 6th. If one of the drivers wants to let us know post-race, I'd appreciate it. Just tag us in the EU Blue chat. We'll be happy to report on that in 2 weeks' time. But we are very much just on hot lap mode right now. There is not a lot of action out there. Cuthbert is 2.5, so that has come down a couple of tenths. But time is running out. 9 minutes. And only a couple of tenths is not going to be easy. We're looking, I think 4 more laps, something like that. Depends on how quickly Lemos gets around. Although it's 1.3, because I think Abelstead had a moment through the final chicane, because on the broadcast controller I saw on the location part, it said in. So Abelstead must have had some issue through that final chicane and just dipped into the pit lane, so that has given Cuthbert a chance to catch up. And if it happens again, then this could be 3rd place back, and they're soliding up ahead of the BMW, so he's going to have to let these guys through, and that might be bad for Abelstead, because if he gets held up too much, then he's losing a ton of time, and that's going to just pull Cuthbert right back into this. But I think he may have timed it pretty well, because we are getting up to the front straight, and actually Solling just immediately lets these guys through. It does say that he's in the pit lane, but of course he's not. So these 2 guys are cleared of the BMW. Good for them to get back out there. Cuthbert, as we head to the start-finish line, 1.3. So it's gone down, but it's stabilized. So 1.3, and well, 7 minutes. Is that enough time, Simon?
I mean, right now, after turn 1, we've gone down way below a second. So I told you I wouldn't doubt Cuthbert to be able to get back at Abelstead. There wasn't even that much of a difference on that lap we were talking about. There was only 3 tenths on that lap where you saw Abelstead listed as in the pits for just a second. So I'm not sure if it was a little incident on the lap before that, or if Cuthbert has just, I don't know, like I said, switched into a different gear. Either way, getting past Salling that easily, that was basically the best case scenario for Abelstead, because usually it's always the first car in line that gets the worst of it when trying to lap another car, that loses the most amount of time to the car behind when lapping. But Abelstead didn't lose any time. Salling was absolutely a gentleman by getting out of the way that easily. Still, Cuthbert is only half a second behind Abelstead now, so Abelstead looks solid. He doesn't look like he's struggling to keep the car together, but Cuthbert right now looks like he has just a little bit more pace in him, so we'll see if we get a little bit of a spicy battle towards the end of this race after all.
Yep, because of that moment with Abelstead, that has opened the gap up just about 13 to Sutter, so that 10-second penalty is going to be nullified by a little bit over 3, but of course has to make it back one spin and it's going to be all over. And he's actually been closing the gap up to Lemos, so it won't really matter if he makes it across. 13.4, Cuthbert really pushing it there through the chicane. I thought he was going to lose it for a second. 8 tenths to Abelstead. We'll see if that has cost him some precious time. So we head across. It's going to be 1.3. He's lost half a second, and this is not what you want as you're slowly pulling your opponent in. Although his lap was 100th of a second faster, it could have been so much more. So 5.5 minutes to go. He can see the Mercedes very well. It's been sitting in front of him for the last, I don't even know how many laps. This probably feels like it's been forever. And it's just so close yet so far, almost like kind of stuck in a Sisyphus type of thing, you know, just pushing the boulder endlessly up the mountain.
But you can see he has gotten the edge on Abelstead in the Mercedes arena. What has happened there? Have we had, yep, we've had a spin from Suter in P2, So you talked about that 10-second penalty being nullified just a second ago. Now that has gone right the other way again. Now both Abelstead and Cuthbert are within 10 seconds of Suda with that spin coming out of the right-hander leading down to the Dunlop corner. So, well, still not a done deal. There might still be a battle brewing between Abelstead and Cuthbert, which might slow them down both enough for Suda to get that 10-second gap back. But right now, that gap is not even 8 seconds to Abelstead. So he has quite the mission on his hands if he wants to open up that gap again and keep his second place. That was a very, very costly little mistake there.
That was, and here's the thing though, Sutter, if Cuthbert and Abelstead, excuse me, or if Cuthbert just gets in, like, in the next couple of laps, right now the gap is, I mean, you saw it open up, he got a little bit wide through Dunlop, so that's going to just chip away so much, but 7.6 right now for Abelstead, 1.1. So yeah, both these guys in striking distance of a podium. Or I mean, Abelstead of course is already on there, but he'll take second. Some extra points in the championship. If these two get together and start battling in these final couple laps, that could be enough for Sutter to hang on to position 2. 7.7, so 2.3 has to come off in the next few laps. I'm not saying that it's entirely out of the question that there's a battle or someone messes up, but it's looking less and less likely, it's looking less and less likely that the gap is going to go back up, but what isn't less and less likely is the potential of a spin. Sutter was running up there for so long, kind of forgot about him, and then he has a spin, and now he's in the picture.
Yep. It's 2 laps left, including this lap, so after we've done this lap, only 1 more lap to go for Suda to try to open up that gap again, and for Cuthbert to try to, well, be victorious over Abelstead. But even if Cuthbert might be a little bit faster than Abelstead, I mean, he was, what, 3-4 tenths faster than Abelstead on the last lap. It's worth thinking about just being cool and calm and sitting behind Abelstead and not risking things, because not only might he obviously be unsuccessful if he tries to go for a battle with Abelstead, he might just make things worse. He might just cost them both enough time to move them outside of that window for Suda again. So it's costs and benefits. If you do try to go for that position, you really have to make it stick. Otherwise, if you're gonna lose yourself that much time, then things are gonna backfire. If you just sit idly behind and take your position, then you've definitely got a safe podium, and there's nothing you have to risk.
Well, final lap has been called out, so Sutter, he's got to hope for a miracle. He's got to pray to whatever deity is going to listen. It might not be his own, but it's got to be something out there that's going to be willing to give him the time of day. Because, well, time is running out. I thought for a second Louis had a chance on Fedka, but lap down is not going to do anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, final lap here at the Nurburgring. Ryan Cuthbert has closed the gap up. He is looking to take third position. He could get it off of penalties from Sutter, but he wants to get it on track and then, gain a little bit something extra for his troubles. But Abelstead holding strong. He is not giving this up at all. He does not want to let this moment slip. But there is a slip that could happen. And hopefully, it's not the one that spells disaster.
Yep, 2 tenths faster again on the last lap, Cuthbert compared to Abelstead. But looking at that 1 second gap right now, that wasn't the best first sector from Cuthbert, and it was a pretty good first sector from Abelstead. So 1 second gap, I think this is a done deal. I think time has run out. I think we're going to be finishing this lap with Abelstead in P2, Cuthbert in P3, and Suda, due to that spin, 4 laps before the end, down into P4.
Still a top 5 finish, though, so that's, good news for him. He'll be, obviously, maybe not as happy, but happy to know that he'll get a pretty solid bit of bookwork in the stat sheet. Right now, though, this is the place we want to look. We're going to check in Bruno Lemos, though, after Julian's unfortunate disconnect, was gifted the lead. So this is going to do wonders for him in the championship. Out of the chicane for the last time. Gets it cleanly through the final corner. Absolutely no problems at all. That McLaren has been pinned to the floor in the wet conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruno Lemos, number 9, goes number 1 here in Germany. Alexander Sutter, the Swiss driver, 10-second penalty, had a spin, has lost a significant amount of time and loses even more, so he's going to drop down. Abelstead is able to hold on. He'll go P2 in the standings. Cuthbert a day late, $1 short, but can be happy to know that he'll walk away with a podium finish. Nasser Asmar will not be taking advantage of the penalty, 1.1 seconds behind after all is applied. So that'll be 5th for him. Rochfeld in 7th position. Great bit of work from him. Brun goes 15th in the meantime. Oteo finishes inside the top 10, the only German driver to do so. So shout outs to Germany for that one. Partez has gone 8th. So he has gotten pretty lucky, I think. So that won't do too much in terms of opening the gap, but it should keep the buffer there. Cairns across in 9th. Rosas 10th as Partez slams it into the wall like an absolute pro. And I don't think Florindo will be able to pick up this 10th spot. Let's look at what the gap is as he crosses the line. A little bit of a wiggle there. No, 21 seconds, so he's a long way off. So he'll be 11th. Charles Phillips coming up to the final chicane for the last time. Does pretty well for himself, so he'll be rounding out the last few corners. Same with Fedka, and we'll just wait on Louis. He'll be the last driver across. But, Simon, we have to keep in mind there is most likely going to be post-race penalties being dished out. So while these results have been confirmed by Checkered, they will be unofficial until we get to Paul Ricard. They obviously will be finalized prior to that, but at the very least, we'll be having those fully updated for you when we get to France. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it here at the Nurburgring. It has been an absolutely unpredictable race, start to finish. We're going to look at the unofficial results here. Overall, though, Lemos takes home the race win. 16 seconds ahead. Abelstead, Cuthbert both moving up a position because of Sutter's 10-second penalties, and Asmar makes it into the top 5. Abelstead, the only non-pro driver in the top 5. So good work from him. And you can see Rochfeld sneaking his way into the top 10. For the Pro-Ams, just Charles Phillips. For the amateurs, Rochfeld, Fedka, Louis, and Baron. We lost him earlier on, pretty much right at the start, so he does not have a chance to finalize his results. And then for the silvers, Abelstead, of course, Cairns, Rosas, 3rd with that 10-second penalty. But Brun, a couple laps down, so he has nothing to worry about there. Saling and Dorn. I think Dorn earlier in the chat said that he lost his VR headset or something, decided to break in it, so he had that to deal with. But Simon, that's it for us here in the Nürburgring. We have 2 weeks until France. What are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do? I mean, we are gonna rewatch this race because that was a wet night race at the Nürburgring. What's not to love? But no, I feel like we've gotten spoiled by rain or by wetness recently in OOR. So it might be starting to get a little bit boring even. No, but I always appreciate wet races. Paul Ricard, we'll see how the weather deals with that. I mean, we're in the south of France in Paul Ricard, so a little bit of a less rainy part of the world compared to the Eifel in with the Nürburgring. Still, Paul Ricard is a nice track to drive in the wet. It's even a nice track to drive in the dry, as all my cultured racing drivers will obviously know.
What's that supposed to
But I'm looking forward to that. There is absolutely no hidden meaning attached to that. Don't worry about it, Nick. I will be looking forward to seeing you next time. And I'll also imagine that some of the drivers will be looking forward to having a little bit of an off week, a little bit of a gap in racing, a little bit of time to concentrate extra hard on practicing for Paul Ricard to get that evil track right.
Yeah, I feel like the bye weeks really allow these drivers to have some extra time to prepare. And before we get going, of course, one final shout out to Simrigs for sponsoring Season 14 of the Sprint Series. We talk about them quite a lot here in the broadcast, so what's one more? Out of Melbourne, Australia, one of the biggest sim racing suppliers in the Southern Hemisphere. All of Australia and New Zealand, you guys are covered if you're like myself and Simon and our drivers here in EU and in NA. We are going to have to work through email, but they'd be more than happy to do some business with you. And if you happen to have the OR Patreon tag, you guys are going to get 5% off your in-store purchases. So do take advantage of that. Sim racing equipment, not cheap. Even the entry-level wheels, we know this hobby is not for the faint of heart. But again, thank you to Simrigs for sponsoring another season. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks stand between us and France, a circuit that, at least in my eyes, is a bit divisive on who likes it and who doesn't, but we'll certainly be there waiting for you on the plateau to see who has what it takes to get to the checkered flag first. But on behalf of myself, Simon Bauer, and everybody here at the OR, I'd like to thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed your stay. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay beautiful. We'll see you next time.